Hey, everybody, welcome back to the podcast. You're listening to the longest running superhero role playing game on Earth. I'm your host, the Game Master, and today we're talking about Invincible, Omni Man, the Martian Manhunter, Martians in general, and just all sorts of stuff. But before we get into that, smash that like button, check to make sure you're still subscribed, and leave us a comment. That helps us out with the YouTube algorithm, but also we love hearing from you guys. We've got an awesome community here, and it's all thanks to you. So thank you so much for being here. With all that said, let's dive in. Prologue to this one is a brief recap of some relevant moments from previous game sessions. In our world, which we call Earth K, there was a big war on Mars back in the day. We base that on a variety of things, one of which being some Golden Age Wonder Woman comic books that were set on Mars. And specifically, they featured Mars, as in the Roman god of war, who had journeyed to the planet they named after him, and he had taken over there. But not only that, in the DC Heroes RPG, there's a power called Broadcast Empath that the character Mars has. And what it does is it affects those around him, causing their urge to commit violent acts rise the longer he's around. So, because of him being on the Red Planet, this awful war broke out that more or less destroyed that world. And as such, a man named Jean Jeans fled to Earth in the mid 1950s to escape the atrocities of war. And in our world, he brought his family with him. They settled on Earth and took on human names. So he became known as a police officer named John Jones. His wife was Mary Jones, and their daughter was Kim Jones. John was a member of the Justice League of America in the Silver Age, which would be the 1950s and 1960s for the most part. His daughter, Kim, went by the moniker of the Martian Manhunter years later. And around Y2K, give or take a little, she gave birth to a son who she named after her father, John Jones II. And he is our current Martian Manhunter. So, as we get into the main plot of this game session, it isn't just our current Martian Manhunter who's going to take on the Viltrumite invaders. What we learn in this game session is during that Martian civil war that I mentioned earlier, a ton of Martians came to Earth. And while our game world has seen a variety of disasters over the years, Martians are just about the most resilient race there is. So, for instance, you can destroy the majority of the Martian Manhunter's body, and whatever chunk is left will grow a face and start doing things like eating dirt, which it then converts into new Martian flesh. See, back in the 1980s, there was this artist named Jim Phillips who did a really famous illustration, which he called the Screaming Hand. It was a blue skinned hand with a mouth on it. And this graphic soon ended up on skateboards and various accessories and bits of clothing associated with the skateboarding hobby. Before long, the Screaming Hand was seen all over the world. About 10 years later, DC Comics decided to do an homage to the Screaming Hand by destroying most of the Martian Manhunter's body. Only his green skinned hand remained, so it grew a face and started eating first. And as it slowly did, it grew a new wrist, then a forearm, then an elbow, etc., until after a while, Martian Manhunter was whole once more. So, despite the fact that our game world has been through an awful lot over the years, the Martians still remain among us, disguised as us, keeping a low profile. That is until the Viltrumites invaded. And the Viltrumites had no idea there was already an alien race on Earth. For that matter, it's not just green Martians like the Martian Manhunter. There are red Martians, like from an old comic book called Gem, Son of Saturn. Orange Martians, like the ones we see in All-Star Comics number 13. Yellow Martians, like the ones we see in Wonder Woman number 104. Blue Martians, like the ones we saw in the Green Lantern animated series from 1967. Purple Martians, like the ones we see in Star Spangled Comics number 89. And white Martians, like the ones we saw in Justice League 71. And let's talk about Martian powers for a second. In the JLA comic in 1997, there was an issue that Grant Morrison did where the Martian Manhunter is on the moon, which, by the way, is 27 APs away from Earth. And he needs to use his telepathy to connect every human being there is in one gigantic hive mind, like the Borg. So when I make a character sheet for the Martian Manhunter, that is a thing that I take into account. That is something he can do. So when the Viltrumites show up, and he can already do everything that they can do, either at their level or a higher level. And for that matter, if you were to leave out Hal Jordan's power ring for a minute, the Martian Manhunter can do everything that the original seven founders of the Justice League can do. He has super speed like the Flash. He can communicate with fish like Aquaman due to all of his psychic abilities. He has all of Superman's powers, which means he can do everything Wonder Woman can do too. And even though he can't make a glowing green hand out of energy like Green Lantern can, he could just shapeshift into a gigantic green hand if he really wanted to. So Martians are problems, man. And the Viltrumites find that out. So we had a massive battle royale, and it was completely one-sided. Viltrumites would try to hit a Martian, so the Martian would become insubstantial. And on the Martian's turn, they use a mind blast for a one-shot knockout. The Viltrumites were utterly and completely outgunned in this adventure, which was nice to see because up until now we had adventures like the one with Thor's brother Bjorn who got knocked out, and it was a bummer to see the good guys lose. So this adventure was a nice change of pace. And speaking of which, that brings us to the epilogue. Martians are everywhere, and they are using their psychic powers to scan for Viltrumites. So this is a turning point in the invasion, and we see the Viltrumites beginning to hide and regroup, trying to figure out how on Earth they're going to deal with these Martians. So the Viltrumites try to pass themselves off as humans, but the Martians can read minds, use X-ray vision, etc., and they are quickly able to tell who's human and who's not. And Martian Manhunter is the one who enters the Hollow Earth and sees the Viltrumites knock out Bjorn, the son of Torun. And so Bjorn was really in need of rescue. And all of these adventures are happening simultaneously. So that is when the Martian Manhunter sees Bjorn, is exactly at that moment. And he mind blasts the invaders before they get a chance to finish Bjorn off. It's also worth mentioning that Bjorn and the Martian Manhunter were two of the big characters that Jason Seidner loved to play a lot. So this was a bit like one of his guys helping out another one of his guys. So that seemed really fitting. And that was it for part 3 of the Viltrumite invasion. And I'm saying this at the end of every video this week. You know, if you've heard the other Viltrumite invasion ones, you can go ahead and shut it off now, I guess. But you know, just a friendly reminder to anybody who didn't hear it, we aren't going to be doing daily uploads anymore. I don't know, for months now, I've just been talking about the history of the game world. So, you know, we've been playing for 40 years. That gave me a lot of material to talk about. But now that we're all caught up, I'm out of material. So I need to be running new games for me to talk about those games. And unfortunately, we only get the chance to play about one game a week. That's not enough for me to stretch into 7 videos a week. And then there are other concerns, and I've mentioned that before, like I am feeling pretty burnout doing so many uploads, you know, like I have been. Um, and then there's the thing of, you know, I want to spend time with my family and stuff like that. So I'm trying to do that life balance thing. And so I'm talking to the listeners about stuff like, what would you like to see me do? Do you want me to just answer questions from viewers? So then in the off days, I could post videos like that. And those are super easy to do. That's like the easiest kind of video there is, I think, doing like mailbag stuff. And then the other thing that had come up was the idea of me actually teaching people how to play DC Heroes, especially with the Kickstarter going on right now. Um, there is more interest in learning how to play the game than I have ever seen before. So if you guys want me to do that, I'd be open to that too. Um, but yeah, whatever you guys want, let me know in the comments section and we'll see what we can do, right? We want to move forward in a way that makes the most number of people as happy as possible. But yeah, that's it for me today. As always, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate you guys. And from everybody here at the longest running superhero role playing game on earth, we hope you have a good one, and we'll see you in the next adventure. Bye.